Actually, I have to here. Okay, so another announcement. I forgot to ask questions. So that was a question. So I have to come every Sunday because I'm the only one teaching the lessons. So, to teach something, you have to actually know it really good. So if you would love to volunteer, you get to be with the principals and analyze it yourself and think about it so that when you teach it, it's within you and you've received the lesson and you're able to give it. So I have a sign-up sheet out there. I would welcome anyone to love to participate in helping youth and also in the nursery, because my sign-up sheet is pretty much blank. I have 3 people who signed up and 1 person several times. So I would love volunteers.
And what's it called again?
The lesson is called Lumendorf.
Lumendorf. Harry Potter spirituality.
Yes.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Cool. Good morning.
Morning.
It's good to see you. It's been a while.
See you back.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I had the privilege of serving in the U.S. Air Force, 5 years active and 2 years reserve. It was a very growing experience for me. I was exposed to, lived in another country, lived in Athens, Greece for 1.5 years, lived up in Washington, D.C. area for 1.5 years. Again, got exposed to, they taught me a foreign language. They taught me to speak Arabic. And so that was really neat. And got to use that on a daily basis as part of my job. So the military was a really big experience for my life. Opened up me to life from the provincial, hometown, whatever, to all of a sudden, wow, the world is really big. So it was an experience. This morning, what I'd like to do, the title is Becoming an Ex-Soldier. And when I looked up the word veteran in the dictionary or in Roget thesaurus, one of the definitions or one of the synonyms is ex-soldier. Ex-soldier. So as veterans, we are ex-soldiers. And what I want to look at this morning is a conflict that I think all of us experience in our lives to some degree, some more so than others, myself included. It's that conflict where, and my spiritual mentor likes to remind me that my biggest battle that I face, whatever, is letting the divine be the divine. Letting God be God in my life. That the biggest fear is the love and the power and the grace that is God in my life. And there are a lot of things I find myself doing to resist that, to be in conflict with that reality. And so what I'd like to look at is how we go about, and I found myself again as a soldier in this conflict. And so what I want to look at, how do I become an ex-soldier? How do I stop doing that, or at least lessen the amount of resistance, the amount of conflict that I can find myself in? And as a source for that, I'm going to look at Psalm 46, the second half of Psalm 46. And it says, "Come behold the works of the Lord, how the Lord has wrought desolations in the earth. The Lord makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. The Lord breaks the bow and shatters the spear. The Lord burns the shields with fire." And then the verse that most of us are familiar with, "Be still and know that I am God. I am exalted among the nations. I am exalted on the earth." And so that ultimately is the solution to becoming an ex-soldier, is to come to the point, remind ourselves that who the divine is, and reminding ourselves, being still, to remind ourselves who God is in our lives. Because most of the time, and he goes on to talk about how exalted this God is. Sometimes when I'm afraid and I start resisting, it's because I'm not quite sure God's bigger than that. I'm not quite sure that this event, I've seen a lot of things happen, a lot of just miracles and things like that. But all of a sudden I come up to the next one, it's like, well, and I have to learn again. Is God really bigger than that? And somehow each one takes on a new nature, a new challenge, if you will. And God just keeps saying, there's more. You are more than you know. You are more than you know. And the divine is more than we know. So what I want to do is look at how God goes about making wars to cease, and looking how that happened in the life of one of my favorite characters from the New Testament, Peter. Peter is so much fun to talk about and to read about because he's so human. He is me. He is us. And so when you see all the ways he interacts and reacts to life, it's like, oh, there I go again. Okay. And when I can see it, I can say, oh, and maybe stop, let go of a little bit of those habits. And the thing says, the Lord makes wars to cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow. Now, if you think back in this time, the bow and arrow was a weapon, and it was used to attack the enemy when they were far out. They're far out, and they're trying to keep as many of them from getting into the perimeter. You're trying to keep as many people who are trying to storm you, trying to destroy you, from getting into your perimeter. So you're shooting these arrows as fast as you can and trying to kill as many as you can so that they can't get up there and reach you. And what I see in that is the idea that a lot of us, we have a paradigm of life. We have this belief about how life works. We have this perimeter, if you will, that we live within. That's made up of these beliefs. And a lot of times those perimeters, those arrows, and we keep shooting those arrows to end up limiting us as well as facilitating our lives. And so what the psalmist is saying is that the Lord comes in and he says, and wants to break that bow, wants to break us of the habit of needing that bow, that the beliefs that we say, well, I'll never let so-and-so, I'll never believe in so-and-so, or I'll never love so-and-so, or forgive so-and-so, or, I'll never let this happen to me. And so it's like, the invitation is, let's revisit that. Let's revisit that, look at that belief again in the light of the divine, in the light of who God is and how big God is. When Peter first met Jesus, Peter was a militant. His whole goal was to destroy the Romans. Peter didn't want to be a saint. Peter didn't want to be a saint. He wanted to destroy the Romans. He wanted them out of there so that they could have their country back. But there were other reasons that he wanted the Romans out of there. Peter was a fisherman. And at that time in history, the fishermen worked mostly for the Romans. They were hired by the Romans to feed the army that was in place at that time. And so Peter worked to keep the Romans. And there was an animosity, if you will. If you can imagine your neighbor, the people who are exercising control over your life, your neighbor is helping to feed them. You're probably not going to be real friendly with that neighbor. You're not going to, it's kind of like somebody comes in and says, well, I'm a Steelers fan. It's like, well, okay, you just enjoy that over there. Okay? You just enjoy that over there. And so, in the same way, Peter knew this sense of separation from the rest of his people, the rest of the people that he lived was among. But he also realized, I think, and maybe not consciously, but at some point, and we'll see at the end of the story that he does finally come. He realized that he was separated from himself. He was separated from himself because he held on to his whole belief was that the Romans are my problem. The Romans are my problem. And if the Romans were gone, I wouldn't have any problems. I'd be okay. And so what happens is Jesus spends several years with Peter, giving him all these different lessons, the Beatitudes, the different miracles and things that happened over those years. And Peter's watching, and Peter's going, and I got to believe that at some point, it's like Jesus says, blessed are the poor in spirit. And Peter's going, wait a minute. How's that going to kill the Romans? Wait a minute. What does that have to do with the Romans being... Hey, come on, let's go this way. And for years, all these years, all this time, and so his perimeter is being reduced. His perimeter beliefs, those things that he's held, are being questioned. And so they're losing some of their energy. They're losing some of that effectiveness in barring him from other people, barring him from the divine, barring him from his own inner heart. And it starts to just whittle down and whittle down. And then the next one he says, God shatters the spear. God shatters the spear. And I like that picture, because if you break a spear, they say we have to break a spear. Well, you still got the head of a spear. You can still run somebody through with it. But if you shatter it into little pieces, you don't have a weapon anymore. And the spear, what I see the spear as, we have these beliefs, this setup where our perimeter is intact, and we make sure that nothing comes in that's going to upset us and this sort of thing. But every once in a while, something trickles through and comes up, and we're faced by it. And so close order combat, and we have to, try to eliminate that idea. Let's pretend, let's pretend I never heard that. I never heard that. And so they sneak up on us, and all of a sudden we meet somebody that has that character, that beingness that we are so suspicious of, whatever, and maybe they're in that person that we are so set against, and then they're saying, oh, yeah, not that. And all of a sudden it confronts us, it faces us. And so one of our reactions can be, I'm just going to run that through. I'm just going to, we're going to destroy that whole idea. And so we try to poke holes in that idea with the spear. In the same way, Peter's attempt at using the spear, I thought, looked at finally when Jesus was taken away at night to be crucified, be tried and be crucified. Peter's kind of standing on the outside. He's had all this training. He's had all these thoughts. He's connected with Jesus. There's something going on there. He's not really sure. He doesn't really totally understand it yet. But there's something going on there that makes him, something inside, say, I want to know more of that. I want to know more of that. But then all of a sudden the government, the Romans, or not the Romans, but the church government, takes him, and Jim told me about that. I called him the Romans one time, and he was polite enough to come up to me later and says, those weren't Roman guards. Oh. And so Peter is kind of standing on the sidelines and watching all this happen, and some woman comes out and says, you're one of them. You're one of them. You follow that guy. You're following. And all the people go, what? Who? And Peter goes, no, I don't. That's not me. Not me. I have nothing to do with that person. And she goes on, no, I know. I saw you together. I saw you together. You are one of those. You are one of them. You belong in that group. And Peter again says, no, I have nothing to do with Jesus or anything to do with that whole idea, that whole process that's going on. The list continues on. Have you run into those people? They just continue to say, you are one of those people. I know it. I know it. And Peter a third time says, no, I don't. I'm not part of that. And so that Peter's, again, the idea is coming to him. It's like, oh my gosh. All of a sudden there's commitment. Am I really involved in this? And it's like, well, no, I'm not. This is not something that I'm part of. This is not. I'm away. I don't want this to be a part of my life right now because it's scary. Because it's scary. And it might endanger the way I have life set up right now. If I fall into this, it might upset the apple cart. People aren't going to see me the same way they used to. People aren't going to think of me the same way they used to. life is going to have to change. And I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to poke holes in that. I'm going to run the Spirit through that and just keep that at a distance again. I won't let that idea come in. And finally, the verse says, God burns the shields with fire. God burns the shields with fire. And the moment I see again, if you're being attacked and this kind of thing, you've thrown out the arrows, you're trying to set the perimeter, people are breaking through one another, finally it's just overwhelming, and you just hide behind your shield and just try to stay alive. And just try to stay alive. Just go into this little, oh my God, don't, don't hurt me. The picture of the movie from the 300 of all of them holding together and just putting their shields over so that they can't be attacked, they can't be hurt. So we put up the shield and finally just say, help. I just can't let this be. I don't want this to be. I don't want this to be. And in the same way, Peter finally, I see it finally grabbing the shield and just running behind it. After the woman asked him the third time, he all of a sudden realized what he just did, and he runs away. He runs away. He says, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this. And he runs away. And what does he do? He goes fishing. He goes fishing. He goes back to that life where he started before he met Jesus. He goes back to that place where he was comfortable, where he knew, I know the routine. I put the nets down, I pull the nets up. I put the nets down, I pull the nets up. I deliver the fish, I get paid. Everything is, there's a flow. And I'm safe. And I'm safe. And life works just the way it does. Life works just the way it does. And so Peter goes back to that place where he felt safe. Where he felt safe. And Jesus does something really neat. He does something really neat. There's no judgment. There's no, you really screwed up, Peter. I was really counting on you. Over in the corner, one little yay Jesus or something, would really help me along there. And all you did was run away and deny me, And Jesus didn't do that. Jesus didn't do that. Peter was out fishing, and Jesus all of a sudden appeared at the fire on the beach. And Peter rushes down to the fire and sits down across from Jesus. And Jesus helps him finally get to the place where he can let go of the bow and the spear and the shield. And he says, Peter, do you love me? And Peter, of course, a lot of people talk about the fact that he said 3 times so that he counters the 3 denials and that kind of stuff. But when I think about it, and I think about that kind of situation, the picture I have is Jesus sitting across, and he asked Peter the first time, do you love me? And Peter right away defensive, yes, I do, I do. And Jesus realizes, I'm not reaching him yet. He hasn't heard me yet. So he says, Peter, do you love me? And maybe a little slower, but with still, yes, I do love him. And Jesus is looking right in the eyes. And again, with perfect understanding, he says again, Peter, do you love me? And the light goes on. The light goes on inside Peter, and he realizes, I do love. I do. I have that love. I have that love for God. I have that love for my fellow man. I love. Yes, Jesus, I do. And Jesus said, live that life. Live that life. And so all those years that they spent together, he brought Peter along slowly. And usually this happens on a slow basis. There are breakthrough times that we experience, where all of a sudden the epiphany, if you will, comes in, and we realize, wow, I didn't realize I could do that. Or I didn't realize life was that big. I didn't realize. But all those years, and Jesus is just putting up with Peter being Peter the whole time. You can imagine, Jesus is trying to get something done here, And it's like Peter's going, and not getting it, whatever, and it's like, the boardroom probably would not have had as much patience with Peter as Jesus did. But he did, because he knew where he was bringing him. He knew that the process. And he brought him to the place where he could let go of those defenses against the divine within him. All of a sudden he saw the divine within himself. He said, I do love. I do love. I care about my fellow man. I care about my world. I care about the divine. The divine lives within me. Oh my gosh. The divine is me. And that awakening to that reality that he could not have realized 3 years before that, or years before that when he first met him. And later on, again, there were things Peter still needed to learn. He didn't become a saint that day. He didn't become a saint that day. There were mistakes he still made. There were things that he still had to learn. Go through that process again where, well, there's some bow and arrow being used. There's some perimeters that need to be reduced. There's some ideas that need to be allowed to have their say, and some fears to be let go of. And so life continues. Life brings us along on that process where we come to open up ourselves and open up our lives more and more, the awareness of the divine within us. And that's what the last verse says. How do I get there? I remind myself regularly, God is. Be still and know that God is. And then realize how big God is. Realize that those fears, those ideas, the things that I'm shielding myself from, God understands. It's like, yep. So I'm not, it's not saying, let go of those ideas. You're being sinful. It's like, I love you. I want you to experience who you are. I want you to experience the joy of that heart inside where I am. And so it continually just invites us to remind ourselves again and to see what might be impeding that progress. So Peter, again, he's us. He's me. And God is faithful to continually beckon, if you will, invite, bring me to the place where I know more and more